Imagine for a second that you are handed the keys to one of the most complex, high-stakes leadership roles on the planet.
Right.
And I'm not talking about taking over a multinational corporation.
Which is hard enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm talking about commanding thousands of troops and thousands of tons of heavy machinery right in the absolute center of a global conflict. Now imagine you are handed this immense, terrifying responsibility, and you are only 37 years old.
It is. I mean, it's a staggering scenario to picture. Most professionals at 37 are just, starting to consolidate their mid-level career trajectories.
Yeah.
They certainly aren't orchestrating the movement of entire armored divisions across hostile continents, all while managing the immediate real-time life and death realities of thousands of personnel.
Which makes the reality of today's deep dive all the more unusual. Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled you're joining us. Today, we are looking at a fantastic set of source material, a deeply detailed Wikipedia article chronicling the life, the military career, and the legacy of Major General George Philip Bradley Roberts.
Better known to everyone simply as Pip.
Pip Roberts, exactly. Our mission today is to figure out how a young officer who started out as an instructor of tank driving evolved into what military historians definitively call the outstanding British armored commander of the Second World War.
And that is a massive claim.
It really is.
The Second World War produced legendary commanders on all sides, names that dominate military history courses today. So to be singled out by historians like Richard Mead in our sources as the outstanding British armored commander of the entire war, that means we are looking at a career of exceptional brilliance.
Unquestionably.
It implies a mastery of a very specific, very unforgiving type of warfare.
Okay, let's unpack this, because even the basic timeline of Pip Roberts' life has this strange, almost poetic symmetry to it.
Well, the birth date.
Yes. He was born November 5th, 1906, in Quetta, British India. And he died on his exact 91st birthday, November 5th, 1997, in East Sussex, England.
It's incredible.
It frames his entire story so neatly. But the meat of that story is tied entirely to the evolution of the machine he commanded.
What's fascinating here is that his life perfectly overlaps with the history of the tank itself. Roberts wasn't just a soldier who happened to be assigned to an armored unit. He was a pioneer in a rapidly evolving technology.
Right, because in 1906...
the tank didn't even exist as a concept when he was born.
Wow.
By the time he was a young officer, armored warfare was in its absolute infancy. His career maps directly onto the evolution of the tank, from clunky experimental metal boxes to the dominant land weapon of the 20th century.
Let's trace that early foundation, because he had a classic, rigorous start. Educated at Marlborough College, then he went to the Royal Military College at Sandhurst. Right out of Sandhurst, he commissions into the Royal Tank Corps. This is in February 1926.
A totally new frontier.
Yeah, and he gets posted to Egypt, gets promoted to lieutenants. But the really crucial chapter, the one that sets up everything else, happens between 1933 and 1937. He gets assigned as an instructor at the Tank Driving and Maintenance School at Bovington in Dorset.
Oh, Bovington.
He is literally teaching the nuts, bolts, and gears of these machines.
We really need to pause on that point, because understanding the mechanical reality of the 1930s is vital for you to grasp his later success. Interwar British tanks were notoriously temperamental.
They break down constantly, right?
Exactly. They were prone to catastrophic mechanical failures. Teaching maintenance wasn't just about checking the oil. It was about understanding severe operational limits. Roberts was gaining a profound, ground-up understanding of what these massive machines could endure and what would cause them to break down in austere environments.
I have to ask, though, does knowing how to replace a heavy transmission or, baby a fragile engine actually translate to making you a better tactician on the battlefield?
Oh, absolutely.
It just seems like two very different skill sets.
It absolutely translates, much like a championship race car driver who also serves as their own chief mechanic. When you know the telemetry by feel, when you know exactly how far you can push an engine before it seizes, or how a specific suspension system handles rough terrain, you make grounded, strategic decisions.
So you know what's actually possible.
Exactly. You aren't just drawing arrows on a map and hoping for the best. You know if your machines can actually execute that maneuver before breaking down. That mechanical intimacy is a massive tactical advantage.
And that foundation pays off the moment the Second World War breaks out. By 1939, he's a young adjutant in the 6th Royal Tank Regiment, and he rises quickly through the ranks during the North African campaigns.
The proving ground.
Right. By July 1942, he's commanding the 22nd Armored Brigade at pivotal battles like Alam el Halfa and the Second Battle of El
That's a
Alamein.
huge engagement.
Massive. And then in mid-March 1943, he's transferred to command the 26th Armored Brigade in Tunisia, pushing through until the Axis powers surrender in North Africa in May.
The North African theater was the ultimate testing ground for an armored commander. It was a war of movement across vast open desert.
No natural choke points.
Very few. You were navigating by sun and compass, dealing with blinding dust storms that choked engines, and managing immense logistical strains. You couldn't hide behind fixed fortifications.
You just had to outmaneuver them.
You had to outthink the enemy in real time, pacing your forces so that your tanks didn't literally grind to a halt in the sand before engaging. Roberts's deep understanding of mechanical endurance allowed him to time his maneuvers far more effectively than a traditionally trained cavalry officer might have.
And the results of those maneuvers are heavily reflected in his military record. Get a load of this hardware. In December 1942, he is mentioned in dispatches, meaning his specific actions were documented in the official high command reports for gallantry.
A big deal on its own.
But then a month later, in January 1943, he earns the Distinguished Service Order. He then earns a bar to his DSO, and then a second bar in July 1943.
3 DSOs.
To be awarded the DSO 3 times is an exceptionally rare honor, which the source material explicitly highlights. On top of that, he earned a military cross.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, these accolades represent something deeper than just bravery. The historian Richard Mead notes that during these desert campaigns, Roberts developed an instinctive tactical flair.
Instinctive tactical flair. I love that phrasing.
It's perfect. That is an instinct forged in the crucible of open combat. It comes from reading the chaotic geometry of a tank battle under fire, balancing aggression with the physical limits of your equipment. North Africa prepared him perfectly for the complexities of the European theater.
And that transition to Europe involves some of the strangest, most highly specialized machines of the war. In June 1943, Roberts is posted back to the UK. He's given command of the 30th Armored Brigade, which falls under Major General Percy Hobart's 79th Armored Division.
Ah, Hobart's Funnies.
Yes. This unit controlled all the specialized armor in the Anglo-Canadian 21st Army Group, famously nicknamed Hobart's Funnies.
Hobart's Funnies is a wonderfully understated British moniker for what were actually terrifyingly effective weapons designed to solve very specific, very lethal engineering problems.
And for you listening, imagine you're trying to clear a heavily fortified path. You don't just need bravery, you need the right specialized tools. Specifically, the source mentions Roberts's brigade was equipped with Sherman Crab tanks.
The flails.
Right. Imagine a standard Sherman tank, but mounted on the front are 2 massive projecting arms holding a rotating cylinder. Attached to that cylinder are heavy chains, or flails. As the tank drives forward, the cylinder spins and the chains literally beat the ground to deliberately trigger and explode landmines.
Clearing a safe path for the infantry and armor behind them.
Exactly. It's wild to picture.
But incredibly necessary. Minefields were the absolute bane of an armored assault. They stall your momentum and turn your tanks into sitting ducks for enemy artillery. Traditionally, clearing them meant engineers slowly crawling on their bellies under fire.
Which is just a nightmare scenario.
It is. The Sherman Crab fundamentally changed the tactical geometry of a battlefield. It turned an impassable wall into a mere speed bump. But it required a commander who deeply understood the timing, the mechanical constraints, and the combined arms coordination required to deploy them effectively.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the British High Command clearly recognized Roberts's unique blend of tactical flair and technical mastery. On December 6, 1943, Pip Roberts is promoted to acting Major General.
A massive leap.
He takes over as the General Officer commanding of the 11th Armored Division, famously nicknamed the Black Bull. And as we established at the top, he was only 37 years and 1 month old.
The rarity of that promotion is profound. The British military establishment was a rigid, seniority-based hierarchy. You generally waited your turn for division command.
You didn't just jump the line.
No, out of all the British general officers who served in the entire Second World War, only one man, Robert Laycock, was younger than Pip Roberts. To hand a division to a 37-year-old indicates that the High Command viewed his specific expertise in armored warfare as absolutely indispensable for the upcoming invasion of Europe.
And the Black Bull was about to face a completely different type of warfare. Roberts and the 11th Armored Division land in Normandy shortly after the D-Day landings of June 6, 1944. They are immediately thrown into the massive, brutal engagements of the Battle of Normandy.
Some of the toughest fighting of the war.
The source lists Operation Epsom in late June, Operation Goodwood in mid-July, and Operation Bluecoat.
Operation Goodwood, in particular, is worth examining, as it was the largest tank battle the British Army ever fought. The terrain in Normandy was defined by the bocage,
The hedgerows.
the ancient, dense hedgerows that essentially turned the countryside into a heavily fortified maze. It was claustrophobic. Tanks were incredibly vulnerable to hidden anti-tank guns and infantry at close range. It was the absolute opposite of the sweeping, open deserts of North Africa.
So his whole playbook had to change.
Completely. Roberts had to adapt his division from long-range maneuvering to brutal, short-range, attritional brawls.
And that adaptability becomes even more apparent once the German lines finally collapse in the Falaise pocket. The breakout that follows is a logistical sprint that is hard to wrap your head around. Let's look at the timeline from the source.
It's blistering.
On August 28th, the division is at the River Seine. By August 31st, they have pushed all the way to Amiens. And by September 3rd, which was exactly 5 years to the day since Britain declared war, they arrive in Antwerp.
That is a massive distance in a matter of days.
I mean, driving that in a modern car today takes a while.
Moving a single vehicle from the Seine to Antwerp in that time frame is straightforward. Moving an entire armored division is a logistical masterpiece.
Because of the fuel and supplies.
Yes, an armored division isn't just tanks, it is a massive mobile city. It includes thousands of infantrymen, maintenance recovery vehicles, ammunition trucks, and most importantly, fuel tankers.
Right, tanks are incredibly thirsty machines.
Exactly. If the tanks at the front outrun the tail, the supply lines, they become useless steel pillboxes. Maintaining that blistering pace required a commander who could aggressively exploit a fleeing enemy while executing the cold, hard math of fuel consumption and supply line integrity. Roberts's mechanical background ensured he never overextended his division's physical limits.
That pace couldn't last forever, though. After the sprint to Antwerp, the war grinds into a brutal, freezing winter. The 11th Armored Division played a minor role in Operation Market Garden in September. Then they were thrust into the desperate, freezing combat of the Battle of the Bulge between December and January 1945.
Which presented entirely new mechanical and tactical challenges in the snow.
They pushed through Operation Veritable in February and March and finally crossed the River Rhine in late March.
Crossing the Rhine was the physical entry into the heart of Germany. It signaled the final decisive phase of the war in Europe, but it also meant uncovering what the Nazi regime had been hiding within its own borders.
And that brings us to one of the most sobering moments in the division's history. In mid-April 1945, Roberts and the 11th Armored Division participated in the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp.
It requires a moment to process the journey these soldiers took.
It really does. They fought from the blistering deserts of Egypt, through the hedgerows of Normandy, across the freezing Ardennes, only to uncover the absolute darkest horrors of the 20th century. Just weeks before entering Lübeck in early May and the formal end of the war in Europe.
The psychological weight of that transition is immense. To go from the high-speed math of logistics and the kinetic intensity of combat to witnessing the sheer, calculated inhumanity of the Holocaust requires a profound emotional toll. It serves as a stark reminder that behind the tactical brilliance and the strategic maps, there is a deeply heavy human reality to commanding an army through this era.
His leadership through all of this was recognized at the highest levels. In February 1945, he was made a Companion of the Order of the Bath, which is one of the most senior orders of chivalry. He was mentioned in dispatches again in August. He also received significant honors from France, including the Legion of Honor and the Croix de Guerre. He finishes the war as a highly decorated hero.
Unsurprising, given his track record.
But the timeline in our source doesn't stop in 1945. Almost immediately after the war, we see a fascinating professional pivot.
A sudden pivot from the military sphere into the democratic one.
Yeah, in July 1945, just months after the guns fell silent in Europe, Pip Roberts stood as a candidate in the UK general election. He ran for the Conservative Party in the constituency of Wimbledon. Ultimately, he was unsuccessful, but as a historical footnote, it's incredibly striking.
This raises an important question about the nature of leadership and transition. Think about the professional whiplash involved here.
Oh, it must have been intense.
For years, you are an absolute authority figure, commanding thousands of soldiers in a rigid hierarchy where your orders dictate life and death. You have the ultimate final say. Then, literally months later, you are a civilian candidate in a democracy.
Asking for votes.
You are knocking on doors, asking everyday people for their votes, attempting to persuade a constituency rather than command a brigade. Regardless of the political outcome, it highlights a fascinating attempt to channel immense wartime leadership capital into peacetime civic duty.
It is a stark contrast in environments. Following the election, he does return to his military roots, but only for a few more years. His rank of Major General is officially confirmed in 1946, with his seniority backdated to 1945. He goes on to command the 7th Armored Division and then the 2nd Infantry Division between 1947 and 1949.
Winding down his military career.
His final military role is serving as the Director of the Royal Armored Corps, before officially retiring from the British Army in September 1949.
Retiring from the military at 43 leaves decades of productive life ahead. A man who mastered the logistics of an armored division isn't likely to fade into quiet obscurity.
Far from it. His leadership simply transferred fully to civilian and corporate life. For 15 years, from 1949 to 1964, he served as a director for a major company, Scribbins Kemp.
Quite the shift.
And he also served his community directly as a justice of the peace from 1960 to 1970, dealing with local civic matters. He remained connected to the military as an honorary colonel for the Kent and County of London Yeomanry Squadron. And, importantly, he documented his experiences, writing a book detailing his wartime account titled From the Desert to the Baltic.
He took the strategic thinking, the ability to manage complex, multi-tiered systems, and the capacity to lead diverse groups of people under pressure, and seamlessly applied those skills to corporate boardrooms and the local bench. It speaks to a deep versatility in his character.
So what does this all mean? When you look back at the entire sweep of Pip Roberts' life, from teaching recruits how to fix temperamental tank engines in Bovington, to pacing an armored division's fuel consumption across France, to sitting as a justice of the peace, what is the ultimate takeaway for you, the listener?
It's a great question.
I think it's a masterclass in how incredibly powerful it is to combine granular technical knowledge with rapid adaptability. He wasn't just a big-picture strategist. He knew the machinery. Because he knew the machinery, he could adapt faster than anyone else, allowing him to lead effectively at an astonishingly young age.
I would add that his story is a profound reminder that knowledge is most valuable when it is understood deeply and applied practically. Roberts didn't just understand tank maintenance in a classroom vacuum. He applied that mechanical understanding to outmaneuver a determined enemy across 2 different continents through totally different terrains.
From sand to snow.
Exactly. He proved that true expertise scales whether you are diagnosing a failing gearbox or commanding an entire division's logistics.
It is an incredible legacy. But it also leaves me with a thought that I want to pass on to you to explore on your own. Pip Roberts spent his absolute prime formative years mastering the chaotic, high-stakes, life-or-death art of armored warfare. He built a skill set perfectly tailored for the defining crisis of the 20th century.
He did.
But when you spend your life learning how to spearhead a tank division across Europe, how do you simply turn that off and transition to being a corporate director or a local justice of the peace? It leaves you wondering, are the skills that make someone a master of wartime crisis entirely different from those needed for everyday peacetime leadership? Or are they exactly the same, just wearing a different uniform? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.